October 7th, 2023 will go down in history as one of the clearest examples of the barbarism of not only Hamas, of the Palestinian society, and generally the Islamist movement in the region and around the world. And October 9th, 2025 will go down in history as the official declaration of we don't care, or we refuse to see what is really happening. Many people might have already seen that the ceasefire does indeed seem like it is happening. Now, the Knesset, I believe, still didn't officially vote on it. It's supposed to happen in the next half an hour, unless they moved it again, because they moved it a bunch of times. So we might get the official declaration during the show, but it's pretty much as good as done. That's the way it's being talked about. Preparations are being made for both the IDF withdrawal, for the arrival of the hostages, and for the release of Hamas terrorists. Welcome to the Daily Objective. Joining me today are Marco Richard and Stuart Margolis, and we might have more people joining us a bit later. I don't know what to really say more, so I'll jump to Stuart you first, because you were on a show yesterday and the mood was at least much different. Basically, today in preparation for the show, I did almost very little preparation because of how unfortunate the situation is. Anything you'd like to say when we start?
Well, I mean, what strikes me with any of these, truce deals is the mistaken assumption that there is a partner of good faith on the other side. It assumes that Hamas is, that there's some disagreement between equals or between, semi-rational people. And if that were so, this would have been resolved, generations ago, I think. The Hamas side is not reasonable. They're not acting in good faith. I just don't understand how people still don't get that. But clearly they don't. They're or at least they're trying to kid themselves that Hamas is interested in peace. I don't think that's the case.
Yeah, it is treated as if, this is two companies merging and they finally figured out the way to like properly do it. So now there's celebration because we have this new thing or some new technology coming, or a country joining NATO or an organization like that, as if, oh, we finally figured out this thing and now we are moving into the future. Marco, yeah, I don't even know how to put up a question. Anything you'd like to start with?
Yeah, it is a bittersweet moment. Sweet because, of course, the hostages are being released after over 2 years in captivity in Gaza. But also bitter because you know that the only victors here are Hamas who gets away with not being wiped out, who gets away with coming out of the tunnels and reestablish themselves in the areas where the IDF will move away from. And frankly, the only victories for the terrorists, the same terrorists that some people call the Palestinians. They effectively won by attacking Israel. I mean, there was a truce already going on the 6th of October. Who broke it? The Palestinians. Every time there was a truce, the Palestinians broke it. Hamas, Fatah, whoever, PLO, just pick the name, they always break it and they always attack Israel. So effectively, I mean, if you ask me like 6 months ago, I would never thought that after two years and 2 days of this war, Israel would have declared surrender. And this is, frankly, as sad as depressing it is I'm sure history will trace the beginning of the end of the state of Israel on this day, when terrorists are effectively told, okay, take hostages because you're going to get your terrorists back, those that have been captured by Israel. And look how Gaza is celebrating. Look how Hamas is celebrating Gaza by effectively telling their people this sacrifice was worthwhile having. You've been bombed all this period after the attack on Israel, but it was worth the hassle because idiots like Starmer, Macron, and all the other demented so-called leader in the West have now declared the Palestinian state. I mean, it doesn't change the fact that the Palestinian state is still a terrorist state, just like the Islamic terrorist Republic of Iran. But bottom line is that they won. The joke is on them, of course, because Iran made the point that every time somebody asks you to sacrifice, on the other side, there is somebody else collecting that sacrifice, making a living out of it and taking advantage of it. But the bottom line is that this is not gonna it's not gonna end up well for Israel. It's a happy day today, but the future is not happy at all.
Yeah, before I go to you, Richard, I'll just throw in one more thing. This is a quote from ARCUK, the Israel national news. It says, according to the decision, security prisoners convicted of murder, manufacturing weapons used in murders, or directly involved in sending attackers who carried out deadly attacks will be released to Gaza or abroad and will be immediately barred from entering Israel or the territories of Judea and Samaria. So we are releasing the terrorists, but it's okay because they are not allowed to come back in Israel. Because, of course, as we know, the people who invaded Israel on October 7th had a permission to do so. This is playing out like an onion skit. Like somebody is trying to steal money from you, but you say, whoa, 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 do you know it's illegal to steal money from me? It's like, yeah, these people know they are not doing something according to law. So seeing a line like that, and I have a few examples of this when that's the biggest part of me having trouble even reading the news, because the way so many news, even on the, I mean, like I said, Archeva is one of the more right-wing, proper, or a bit better news, and even they have some crazy headlines. But yeah, Richard, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I get the same kind of emotional reaction or make the same link as I do to that moment you get in a horror film where the crowd is celebrating and euphoric at the defeat of some monster or something. And you know it's a premature and that you know that they only a few characters can see the implications of what they're celebrating, what it will mean, and what evil is coming next as a result. And that's the feeling I get, because when you celebrate things like peace and hostages release, they sound lovely as little bubbles isolated from everything else that they represent and they're linked to, everything else they're connected with. I mean, peace that simply allows Hamas a breather is not a peace. It's a break for Hamas or its replacement to rebuild. And it's without the ideology being crushed that Hamas is built upon, then the ideology is still there, and it's just taking a breath, a gap, whilst it rebuilds, ready to destroy Jews again, either in Israel or anywhere else in the world. So is that peace? Is that a reason for balloons and excitement and big cakes? No, it's not, is it? And when it comes to the hostage release, yes, of course, none of us want to see, nobody wants to see hostages released more than like us on this channel, for example. We want to see those people cruelly taken, those civilians cruelly taken on October the 7th freed, especially, those that still have lives ahead of them and haven't been murdered, either on October the 7th or since. Of course, we want to see them free, but we don't want to see them free at the price of demonstrating that hostages are chips for bargaining with from here on out, which is what this represents as well, isn't it? Basically, there's another 10 million potential hostages in Israel. There's countless, numbers of Jews across the world who are future potential hostages to secure whatever somebody wants, if they have demonstrated by what's going on here that taking Israelis or Jews and holding them captive gets you what you want. That's what the party is about. At the same time as you can partake in the joy of the individual members who are currently taken and their families when they're reunited, hopefully on Sunday or possibly Monday, according to the latest news.
Yeah, something that is, I don't know if disturbing or this is the one time where, when you have like world leaders, sometimes they are sort of like separated from you. But at the end of the day, they're humans with human emotions, with hopefully,
Some of
with,
them.
yeah, and with free minds potentially, ability to be uncompromised. It's really hard to talk kindly about politicians or world leaders, but have we're born tabula rasa and have the same capabilities, right? And how do they feel? How do they see when now that this deal is being done, you have celebrations, right? The Houthis are celebrating, Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinians are all celebrating. How can you look at that and not think, ugh, why are you celebrating? I thought this is a win for us. Again, this war is war. This wasn't some disagreement. This wasn't some union strike or something where technically you can have both sides celebrating if they end up coming into a deal and stopping something. No, this was many people oftentimes say it's a human-made catastrophe in Gaza, right? And they try to put the blame on Israel. But yeah, it is a human-made thing. It was made by Palestinians and Hamas. They started this war. Them ending it or them agreeing to basically have peace is not a cause for celebration because they haven't changed. Nothing has changed about them. They want to continue this. And I mean, to go to you, Stuart, yeah, what do you. This is where I really am wondering about sort of like people's psychology. Like, how can you look at something like this and is it just pure pragmatism? Is it just pure, basically that actually the lack of, because as somebody who basically was interested in objectivism since like 15 or something, I do not even imagine like a mind without having a philosophy. So is this where it really brings people who are completely, disintegrated?
Absolutely. This is range of the moment, pragmatic, thinking, not based on principle, not thinking long range. It's just like, oh, we get back hostages. Well, that feels good. Let's celebrate. Not just not even thinking about what it means and like you said, why are the bad guys celebrating? And it's a blank out. Or if you force the issue to be like, well, everybody wants peace. Yeah, that's not true, and that's not why they're celebrating. They're celebrating because their strategy won. They got, yeah, you could look at, oh well, but Gaza's destroyed, Gaza city's in ruins. They've lost so many people. None of that matters to them. If you have this fanatical Islam belief system, all those dead people are being, rewarded by Allah in heaven. So it's not a tragedy to them, and they are getting a large part of what they wanted, and recognition from the world. It is a win for them. That is why they're celebrating. They're not celebrating because the killing has stopped. No, that may be why the range of the moment people in America and all are celebrating, because that's they can look at that and be like, oh, hostages are coming home, the killing has stopped, and they don't think about it any further than that. But Hamas and the Palestinians are celebrating because this is a win.
Yeah, and something it reminds me of is, when you have Hamas, they really do not care about the flourishment of the people. Their goal is not basically some kind of prosperity. It reminds me, funnily enough, of when I play some grand strategy game that I'm in charge of a nation and where my goal is basically to destroy the enemy nation. When I go for that goal, the achievement of that goal is the only thing that matters. I don't care about the livelihood of my people. I don't care about what happens after that because I achieve my goal. And this is what is Hamas and Palestinians themselves. They only care about the destruction of Israel. Uh, they don't care about the day after. They don't care about what will happen in the meantime. They don't care about consequences. It's completely. I mean, it sort of reminds me of the Nazis at the end of World War II. Where were resources of Nazis going into at the end of it? To concentration camps, making sure they manage to kill as many Jews as they can, even though they understood it's over, even though they understood this will be terrible for them. The achievement of that goal was more than anything else. And this is the same, virtually the same society. Marco?
Yeah, and that's a problem, isn't it? Because the Israelis are celebrating the return of the hostages and if you like the end of dispatching the young people into a war zone, while the Palestinians are celebrating victory. That's the difference. The Palestinians have won this war by starting it. The Palestinians have won the war against Israel, despite butchering 1,300 people on October 7th, despite taking 250 hostages, despite showing every time how hideous and evil they are by hiding weapons in schools and hospitals, by letting their own population die, just to create a propaganda shot for their cause, and of course by supplying pictures for the as Stuart called them, the range of moment people who react with emotion rather than thinking. They see a picture on Instagram, therefore come out for Palestine and this kind of stuff. They won the propaganda war. But I mean, the world has changed since October the 7th. If anything else, because here in the West we've seen who the enemies are, and by Jimbo, we got so many enemies in our midst. We've seen suddenly the mask has slipped from all the people who pretend to be, buying the freedom-loving propaganda and actually showing how actually filled with hate and violence they are. And we'll have to deal with that from now on. I mean, now we know that we cannot put the genie in the bottle anymore. And they're not going to go away because the chants will not stop. The hate towards Israel and the Jews will not subside just because the guns are silent. And by the way, in the guns in Gaza are silent right now. Once the deal is taking effect, only because Israel will stop shooting. But like we've seen on October the 7th, Palestinians still throw missiles at Israel. And you can guarantee that under whatever guise, under whatever brand, they will be the ones that destroy the peace again. And this time could be even worse because, of course, with international involvement in Gaza, effectively you tie the hands of Israel. They will not be able to bomb wherever the Islamists hide, because if they hide, for example, in a French or in a Qatari or in a Saudi establishment within Gaza itself, Israel will have its hand tied. We won't be able to do that because the backlash from the world would be enormous. So effectively, this deal is not only rotten because effectively declares we can't be bothered anymore, we're not going to fight, and we're going to return the terrorists, but also means that in the future, any action in Gaza to destroy the terrorists is going to be impossible. And the propaganda, the hate that is spread in the world nowadays will just resurface if he ever goes away for 5 minutes.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of lessons drawn from this that are sadly, well, they're the correct lessons based on how Israel's behaved and how the West has behaved, but they're going to make the next crisis worse, aren't they? In how well social media can be mobilized to use altruism as a weapon against the West and the world for the benefit of those who want to kill groups of other people, such as the Palestinians and Hamas. I think it's the selective focus that you're talking about, isn't it? It's the fact that this story, this deal, this moment in time can be presented with a very set selective focus that shows you a group of people that you can be happy about being happy for, and therefore you can fade out all the existence of the rest, isn't it? I mean, they will show, for example, Gaza. They've already seen some pictures of cheering Gaza children in Gaza. Now, you don't know what they've been told just as that photo's taken. You're told they're cheering in Gaza at this deal. But are they also told they're cheering in Gaza because they've just defeated the mighty Israel, the Zionist enemy, that they've managed to kill more Jews and effectively they've won the war. So off you go, cheer kids. Click, click. There's your photo. You're not going to be shown the photo of, as you said, Stuart, particularly things like the Houthis, where there's not generally sympathy for there's not child Houthis that we're talking about all the time. They are proper. They are terrorists who are blowing up shipping of any kind, or have been destroying shipping passing through to Europe, etc. And those kind of people celebrating are not going to be seen as part of the pictures at all, part of the imagery you're going to see for sure. But also, you're not going to see people in Iran celebrating, including the leadership of Iran. But you are going to hear enough stories and press releases from Iran that already tell you that they are cheering. This includes the fact that Iran said it's going to call on the international community to ensure that Israel meets its side of the ceasefire, and that includes the fact that Trump has said he's going to help work with Iran to help it rebuild its country. But it can't have a nuclear weapon, but it'll help the Iranians to rebuild the country the country that was building a nuclear weapon, despite all promises not to, that they had to blow up in order to set it back. So all of that's in it, and it depends on pulling back and seeing the full picture, seeing the links, understanding the principles that are really at play. And all of that flies in the face of the short range thinking and the selective focus, and it means you need to really look at what it means rather than just have that emotional reaction to the words peace or hostages or whatever.
There's a few more things I wanted to bring up. One of the things that I see is this really does seem, and I mean, it always does seem like an emperor has no close moment, right? It's everybody, every world leader is supposed to celebrate it, and everybody is. And the fact that there isn't questioned, like, okay, you have the Israeli society celebrating it, you have the world community celebrating it, you have Hamas and Palestinians celebrating it. Why didn't this happen before? I mean, it seems like everybody is on board, so why was not everybody on board earlier? I think that's one thing that's like missing, that people try to ignore the fact that if this really was something that everybody was good with, it would have happened a long time ago. The reason why there wasn't a ceasefire with Hamas wasn't because, they're just trying to figure out the kinks. No, it's Israel wanted to prevent resurgence of Hamas, wanted to destroy Hamas. I mean, that was one of the goals from the start. And they gave up on that goal. That's the only way to take it. We do not have fully, I think, the deal that will happen. We have the original 20-point plan, but I believe a lot of it must have changed between when it was first presented and now, since at first Hamas didn't accept it, or accepted it in points. So something must have changed. And again, we have Hamas terrorists being released. We don't know who specifically. I know Marwan Barghouti, for example, was one of the senior terrorists that Hamas did want. Maybe they back down on that, but I wouldn't hold my breath. So, I mean, Stuart, what made this deal possible? I mean, Was it really just, figuring out the kinks? When it
No.
comes to just specifics, maybe I can tell people so we know what will happen in the next few days. So once the Israeli cabinet accepts this proposal, within 24 hours they'll withdraw from, I think, mainly Gaza City. For those who remember the map, maybe I have it somewhere. It's the yellow line, so Israel will still occupy about 50% or so of Gaza, and then there is the 72 hours at which the hostages will be released. The first time I heard it was supposed to be early Sunday, but now I think Trump said it might be Monday or Tuesday. So we'll know by then if where we're going. But yes, Stuart, any thoughts on this?
I think what changed is Israel's resolve. I think in the face of world pressure, they realized that they were not going to be able to crush Hamas the way they had wanted to. I think they made a huge mistake not going in harder and crushing them immediately while the world sympathy was at least somewhat on their side. By dragging it out this way, they lost the PR war completely. And I think they finally realized that, yeah, there's no coming back from that. And if we want to have any allies in the world, we need to capitulate on this. Again, I think that's short range thinking. I think it may ultimately end up being the end of Israel. I hope not, but it certainly ensures that there's going to be future violence. The lesson is that taking hostages works. It's painful, you lose a lot, but in the end, you get what you want.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to, maybe it's early for a prediction, but what will most likely happen is, something that we've always seen. I just, for this episode, I just looked into the 2014 Operation Protective Edge and how there was a ceasefire there. And interestingly enough, you see very similar thing happening. A bunch of ceasefire tried to happen. Hamas broke them, so they didn't go fully in. Then eventually, I think specifically by 2014, Egypt got involved. They managed to push something through. Basically, it was a ceasefire where Israel would pull out. And then while it's pulling out, there will be negotiation over sort of future of what will happen with Gaza situation. And of course, those negotiations never happened. So you pretty much did nothing happen until the next time Hamas decided they are ready to kill more Jews. And I think this is what is likely to happen here. Although the operation is much bigger, so it might look differently. But if Hamas really does release the hostages, if Israel releases the terrorists, there will be pressure on Israel to fully pull out with the idea of we'll have negotiations, we'll have the the transitional authority or whatever was the name of the organization that is supposed to take over, or the countries will get involved or will get UN involved, but eventually nothing will happen, and Gaza will Hamas will most likely recover in Gaza, will rebuild itself with the other terrorist organization, and we'll have to wait for next time they'll try something. But Marco, do you think?
Well, it doesn't. They don't even need to rebuild them much because Hamas is still there. The Palestinian Authority, again, another terrorist pseudo state, is still there. It's not going to go anywhere. And all they're going to do is just have some input in what happens in Gaza. But the bottom line is that here, what's different in this particular war, apart from the savage attack on October the 7th, which is unprecedented since the Holocaust in the 40s, what's changed here is the kind of backlash that Israel received from the West, from the country they are supposed to be their allies. And why this happens? Because we've seen a surge in propaganda and probably funding as well from places like Russia, Iran, and certainly China. I mean, here, another one who's probably celebrated is the communist dictator Xi Jinping in China, who's seen that All you need to do, okay, I'm going to invade Taiwan and then start calling for peace and a ceasefire. We've seen what's going to happen. Or we can already see what's going to happen in a few years, in a few months' time, perhaps. You know, but by appeasing the people who start a war, just look at Ukraine and Russia, for example. What do you think is going to happen? Well, the guy who started the war in the first place, the guy who think he can get something out of it, will go fully ahead, knowing that all they have to do, declare, oh, I would like to stop, I would like to have a ceasefire, and then keep whatever they've done. You know, Putin will keep these territories, the Ukrainian territories. Xi Jinping will keep Taiwan. I mean, this is not an accident that this kind of support in the West suddenly surged so much. It can't just be justified by anti-Semitism. Yet there is lots of anti-Semitism, and we've seen raising its ugly head again. But most of this is actually fueled by the left. We've seen the communist parties, the labor unions, they are constantly pushing the pro-Hamas, pro-Gaza agenda. It's always the Marxists that push this. It happens in Italy, happens in France, happens in Spain, happens in Germany, happens here in Britain. So it's not an accident that these people are doing this, because they're acting on behalf of somebody who pushes them, who funds them, who gives them the money to buy the flags and all this kind of stuff. And this is another, if you like, sinister aspects of this war. Not only the fact that the capitulation of Israel, who, as Stuart mentioned, because of their implicit altruism, are unable to defend themselves. But it's also the fact that other nefarious parties are observing and taking notes. They're learning how to wage a war, and they're learning how to stop a war when things get dodgy for them. And that's diabolical, because if they see that the West will not stand up for the Western value of freedom and protection of the individuals, well, you know, we're all stuffed, aren't we?
And in this, you're seeing some of the lessons that have gone before that have been equally, wrong and hideous. The fact that you've already established in the past that releasing, well, one hostage, one soldier, IDF soldier from Gaza for thousands of Palestinians, that's already been established as a fair swap, or something you're prepared to concede to. And then, of course, all you see is that being done again and again in this case, don't you? And then when it comes to, who's going to be released, some of that detail's not been entirely worked out yet. Some of that's not been entirely revealed yet. Probably is known in many ways, but they need to manage the PR of how terrible it is that you're going to be releasing some of these Palestinian prisoners who've done some of the most barbaric things back into a form of freedom that's, out of prison, out of Israeli control, where they can live out their lives and conduct more anti-Israel, anti-Jewish activity in the future. Now that I've heard mentioned in the course of that they requested, like, the Sinwar brothers' bodies, for example, and that was refused. The Marwan Barghouti, that's not necessarily not going to happen. It's not going to happen as the first part of it, but it's not going to happen for certain. I think, as you said, Daniel, you can't be sure that he won't be free at some point soon, despite his 5 life sentences, despite the murder charges for the Second Intifada, despite the fact that, of course, he's badged as being a part of Fatah, the rival of Hamas, as if they hold a rival ideology to Hamas. When they don't, they hold the same ideology. They're just another, just angling for power for a different group of people, but on the basis of the same ideology, on the basis of the same desire to wipe out Jews and Israel itself. And then you're talking about the 53% that Israel's going to hold, or the terror-free zones that they talk about, and who's going to determine whether it's a terror-free zone or not. I noticed that Turkey's put itself up for one of those that's prepared to monitor how the ceasefire is going. Well, obviously they're going to be truly impartial, aren't they? But no matter who it is, even if it's Israel itself monitoring whether an area is a terror-free zone, what does it mean when the first rocket flies over, or the first car bomb, or the first, person killed by a ramming of a car at a checkpoint, or that kind of thing? What is it going to mean for that? Does it mean it is now a terror zone again, or because chances are people are going to say, no, you said it was a terror-free zone. You can't go back on your word, no matter what happens afterwards. And the threshold for it becoming declared a terror zone will be so much higher than any other part of the world or anybody anywhere else that would be considered a terror-free zone. So all of that doesn't leave you with much, confidence or enthusiasm that, we're at the end of this.
Yeah, and when we are talking about the day after, we first we have a super chat from Bonnie, thank you so much, and a super chat from Jonathan, thank you so much. When we talk about the day after, something I've seen earlier in the chat, somebody said something like going back to October 6th or something like that. Basically, this is returning to the situation before October 7th. But in reality, it is not, because October 7th did happen. We cannot erase it. It was a day where something should have been clear to the world. In a similar way, 9/11 should have been a big wake-up call to many people. Yet, when it comes to, you cannot return to the sort of pre-9/11 world. You cannot return to pre-October 7 world. It did happen, and the fact that we want to act as if nothing happened, and if we only do that, somehow the situation will be same. Not to even mention that pre-October 7 world wasn't good, because it was the world that made October 7 happen. It was a world where something like that could happen. So even if somehow we can simply return to pre-October 7 world, that's a bad thing to do, because we need to move forward. And we need to figure out the situation with Hamas and the Palestinian culture at large. That's why I really dislike when people talk about ideologies as or about anything, any solutions as something of the past. That simply, if we bring back something from the past, it will be better. No, we have more information to do something more proper. We know how to deal with Hamas, and more than ever, we should understand what needs to happen. Yet, Stuart, I mean, we refuse to see. I mean, earlier, I think Bonnie in the chat said something interesting. She said, this makes me think humanity is on a downward spiral that nothing can stop. The evidence is right in front of us. And then she also mentioned, and then I remember that people like those who do these shows exist. So thank you for that. But yeah, it really does seem like we are on this spiral. And where does it end? I mean, I'll go to Marco and Richardson, where a country that actually did experience socialism, that had to go all the way there to maybe for a little bit figure out that maybe we shouldn't do that. But yeah, Stuart, when will this break with Islamism specifically? Are we waiting for like a first European nation to like actually fall from that ideology? Are we waiting for something like 9/11 happen in some European country for a little bit of a wake-up call? Or what is it? And do we really need to wait for, these terrible things to happen?
Unfortunately, I think, we got the wake-up call on October 7th, and the world hit the snooze button. It didn't answer the call. So I don't know if there's anything that will wake them up. I think we're in for, at least in the foreseeable future, until the philosophy starts to improve, I think we're in for an endless cycle of just this. There'll be temporary truces while the bad guys regroup, and then they will hit again. They'll hit harder. They'll hit wider targets. And for, there'll be some pushback, but then again, there'll be this pressure to, we need peace. We need to make a deal. And I don't see an end to that cycle until there's an improvement in the philosophy, until people are not seeing everything through this altruistic lens. And unfortunately, I don't know how that's going to happen. I think, even Israel aside, I think Bonnie's right. I think the world is, I don't think it's a death spiral. It's not irrevocable. We can certainly turn it around. But I do think we're seeing a rise of authoritarianism around the globe. Moral clarity is lacking everywhere. I don't think there's any easy solution right now. I wish there were.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to sort of things becoming bad, I have like several examples. I mean, people, of course, who read Atlas Shrugged, sort of like slight spoiler, basically things are getting worse and worse and worse. And some people could see it from day one, basically from the philosophy that is becoming more prevalent. And in a way, some people never saw it coming. And in a sense, even when the sort of collapse of society happens, they still sort of do not see it as this is something bad. And that's what is the worst, right? I've recently watched The Big Short about 4 times in the last week. So now that is one thing that is playing me in the head again and again, which for those who didn't know was covering the 2008 housing market collapse. And something that was sort of clear there is the same kind of thing of basically everybody is refusing to see what's happening until it hits you hard. And this is what we see oftentimes is even when we talk about economy now, it's like, well, now it's doing fine, it's doing better. And it's like, no, things are better than they were, but things are bad. And it feels like, I mean, to go to you, Marco, now, it feels like people will not recognize that it's bad until it happens, which usually is pretty late. And we don't know what that happens is, right? When I mentioned the 2008 recession, it's one of the biggest like collapses, like global economic collapse in the recent history. When we talk about the rise of Islamism, what is that thing that will, do it?
Well, first of all, I would argue that the biggest economic collapse we had in the last period was actually man-made, caused by the reaction to COVID, when the world economy was effectively shut down, and that. But going back to what you were saying about the reaction to the 2008 collapse. I mean, when then you have people like Christine Lagarde, the current president of the European Central Bank. At the time, she said, if Lehman Brothers had been called Lehman Sisters, it wouldn't have collapsed. Well, talk about another economist who doesn't understand anything about economy, anything about how the thing works. Because in the end, people always rationalize what's happened, analyze the facts under their own lens. And the lens that they use is always collectivism, and it's always statism, and it's always altruism. If you to go back to what Bonnie was saying, things are not really going as bad as they used to be. I mean, it's true, we used to be able to fly from London to New York in 4 hours up to 20 years ago. But these things are coming back. Now we have the internet. We are able to do this kind of shows. Stuart is in the United States. Daniel is in Slovakia. We're in Britain. So things are better. It's just that the morality that makes them feel worse is still there, and the morality is altruism. It's the morality that demands a sacrifice. When somebody asks you to sacrifice yourself, that's a big alarm bell going on. It's somebody else behind the scene who's gonna benefit from your sacrifice. This is not the kind of morality we have to continue to live under. We have to start understanding that looking after your own life is the most important thing that's ever been on this planet. And once you understand that what's required in order to fulfill your life is paramount, your value come before somebody else's value. You have to stop living for somebody else's under somebody else's rules and start behaving in a way that makes your life better. And if everybody did that, everybody started respecting each other's rights to enjoy their own life, well, we wouldn't have this kind of conflict in the first place, because people would be worried about making their life better rather than making somebody else's life worse, which is what's happening at the time right now. And it's hard to convince people that altruism and sacrifice is bad, because of course it's embedded in religion, it's embedded in most cultures, but ultimately you have to understand that living for somebody else, for somebody else's values, is not beneficial to you. And this kind of acceptance, this kind of acceptance of this morality, which leads ultimately to everything we've seen from the Second World War onwards. All the disasters, the worst man-made disasters, are caused by the bad morality. I mean, people do not start wars just for the sake of it. They start wars because they've got an ideology behind it. They get them to the point where they cannot use reason and they have to resort to violence. So it's not that things are getting worse. Just people refuse to use their mind, and people refuse to recognize reality. There's this continuous war against reality. Just take a religious person. When faced with reality, they say, no, I'm not going to think, I'm not going to look at the evidence. I just withdraw myself in this made-up world because I can't cope with it. It's just what makes things worse. And collapse the whole situation.
I think
if I can just throw in one more thing, something that I think worries me the more is not necessarily the Islamist takeover, because I think the bad is weak to actually do something properly. But what worries me the more is sort of improper response, right? Because with the rise of, with the problematic immigration, with the, again, rise of Islamism, we had this rise of sort of like the populist right in pretty much America, in all of Europe. Now, a lot of their grievances are correct, right? There is a certain amount of problem, but when it comes to solution, that is in a way something that might be a bit more scary. But yeah, Richard, sorry.
well, I was just going to add to Marcus' point, really, and the fact that despite the fact that the world is obviously bleak, and despite the fact that we're obviously not partaking in the celebration that's going on right now at the way in which this war has been brought to an end and what that really means, that doesn't mean that there aren't plenty of good things to latch onto. Obviously your own life is paramount, as Marco outlined there, and that's where you find your most joy, obviously. But even looking at a wider picture, you've also seen quite a few people wake up to quite a few elements of seeing the links that are going on between things. Take Greta Thunberg, for example. Think of how many kids were wowed by Greta Thunberg and her environmentalist attitude, and have since seen, obviously this doesn't apply to all of them. Some of them get sucked along with her even now in her anti-Jewish phase. But some of them will have suddenly seen her in her anti-Jewish phase. They will have seen that, like a recent, cock up of supporting a tweet which showed a hostage from an Israeli hostage. What was his name? Ivatar David, who's still a hostage at the moment, looking emaciated and thin in a tunnel in Gaza, he was referred to as a Palestinian, prisoner who was being badly treated by the Israelis, according to Greta's tweet, or the tweet that she forwarded, and showing her utter ignorance and the fact that she'll take anything that promotes her cause, even if it actually states the absolute opposite. And people like her have been exposed. Things like, at the moment, the way the tabloids are covering this story in the UK is all about is Trump going to win the Nobel Peace Prize? Vote in our poll now. Should he get the prize for returning the hostages and ending the war? And yet, for many people who can really see, the Nobel Peace Prize itself is shot as a concept. It was shot when they gave it to Obama within 2 days of him rocking up at the White House, frankly. But it's even more shot now as a compromise with evil prize, which is what it represents really. Who has compromised with evil most this year and therefore gets a prize for it? So although not everybody will see and not enough people will see, and we can focus on the vast masses who are deluded or willfully ignorant or evading or any of those things, you have to also focus on those that are waking up, those that are making those links, those that are coming to see what they missed before and really understand how the world works and therefore how good can prosper and how evil can be defeated, what the right routes to both those things are.
Yeah, I mean, when you mentioned the Nobel Prize, yeah, I mean, just going through, I think I was checking Times of Israel, and they had, what did they have that? This was the title on Times of Israel: "Dampening Trump's Chances. Nobel Institute says Peace Committee finalized its pick on Monday." And it's like, ah, shucks, we couldn't get Trump in before this, and even the whole way this ceasefire has been going about, it sort of feels like they wanted to do it on October 7th, like they wanted to finalize it 2 days ago, and just happened, because it would be nicer, and just didn't happen to do so. Well, with that, we have Alex from Israel joining us. So, yeah, I mean, Alex, we have been talking about this for almost an hour, but how is Jerusalem right now? I'm seeing that there are some traffic congestions happening. So, maybe
Okay, I don't, I don't know about that, but okay, so you have, I think, a very mixed bag. It's, even within myself, there's no question that I'm ecstatic at the idea that these people are going to be free, right? I mean, who can ever, and seeing the delight on the families' faces. I mean, really, nobody can. I mean, nobody can understand that kind of joy, and so for them, in a way, I do feel happy. But it's we've compromised with evil, the lowest kind of evil, and that is always demoralizing, especially when our soldiers have fought like lions for the past 2 years. Every single person has, I don't know, every single person, I would say, has lost a little bit, right, in it. Whether that's, your husband is away for a year and you're raising the kids, okay? Or maybe it's your entire sense of security. And or you've actually lost a member of your family, right? I mean, there's also a lot of families like that, or the 10,000 injured. But the thing that kind of holds you, I suppose, is this idea that, okay, yes, it's very hard right now, but it's going to be better because we're going to have a military victory here. And it's all, going to be for the right, like a great outcome. And then when I really think about, in the next couple of days, 2,000 murderers are going to be released, and I think about Malky Roth, Daniel, that we've spoken about before. I think about Arnold Roth. I think about her father, and how just his life was just destroyed when his daughter's killer was released onto the streets, and it kills him every day to see her as a TV personality in Jordan. I mean, so I think about all of those new victims, right, that are going to be re-victimized, and it's extremely painful. There's no question in my mind that it's very painful, but in the wider context, I see a lot of discussion about, is Islam going to take over the West, and do we all need to be terribly frightened of it? And I think that the West has nothing to fear against Islam because it's such a pathetic conspiratorial ideology that produces quite literally nothing but strife. So I think that if the values that you hold are strong, the values of liberal democracy, individual rights, for example, right? These are things that you hold and you really protect them, then you have nothing to fear against, radical Islam and these, complete degenerates and their jihads. But the thing that you have to really fear is your resolve, is your belief in your own morality, is your belief in your own cause, is belief in your own virtue. So that's the threat, right? Because if you don't understand why it's important to protect these things, then even a weak ideology can take over. We saw that with communism, right?
Yeah, I mean that is what is like one of the, I guess, the weirdest feelings. This is not us, and I'm trying to bring up like historical examples, but this is not us failing in a war in a way that we weren't strong enough, or when it comes to your individual life. This is not you not getting a job or failing something. This or anything in that regard. This is the world said bad Israel for defending itself, and Israel agreed. Israel said yes, we understand your concern. We do not want to harm the Palestinians because we ourselves believe that Palestinians are separate from Hamas. So, yeah, I mean, Stuart, what is that is like that like weird feeling, right? It's that we didn't do, meaning sort of like us on the channel, in a sense, we didn't do anything wrong. It's, the world is just so like I don't want to say screwed, like badly oriented.
Well, I think Western culture has failed to understand its own virtues. I mean, I think this is an ongoing failure that we're seeing in real time, really, I think, since 9/11. And it's I agree with Alex. I don't think that Islam is any kind of a threat, either militarily or ideologically. I think the threat is the fact that we don't understand our own virtues and therefore are gradually losing them, and we're doing it to ourselves. It is not Islam is not doing this to us. We are doing it to ourselves, and that's the real threat, that we are giving up those values piece by piece. But yeah, it's not coming from Israel. It's coming from our own moral failing, our own failure to understand what makes our society work.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, absolutely, the evil is impotent. But when we talk about our inability to recognize that evil still needs to be challenged, it still has to be fought, because if you don't, that is how the evil gains power. The fact is that every day, every minute that we do not recognize it, it means somebody was murdered. It means Russians are killing the hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians. It means October 7 happening. So,
Yeah.
I mean, Marco, um, anything else to add on this?
Well, yeah, I mean, you guys are right. Clearly, Islam is not a threat as such. The threat is us just surrendering without even standing up and saying, hang on a second, our way of life is the civilized way of life. It took us 2,000 years to get here. We discover what's important, what makes a life worth living, and we're not gonna go back to the Middle Ages just because you had a vision or some hallucination. So, but it's not surprising. I mean, when people accept things like the COVID lockdown without screaming blue murder for that, without pushing back at the state, and in fact go in the opposite direction, asking for a bigger state, getting the state to solve their problems. They don't realize that actually they are, in a way, creating their own enemy. I mean, the founding fathers, the founders of the United States understood that the big government is actually the obstacle to a fruitful, happy, successful life. So that they put legislation in place in order to stop the state from intervening on people's life. The Constitution, the whole point of the Constitution is to stop the state from taking over people's life. And we seem to go the opposite direction. When you hear, for example, people saying a tax cut is too expensive, it's like, what? It would be like asking somebody who's robbing you, you have to take more money because you can't afford not to rob me. This kind of thinking is just diabolical. When people don't realize that a 20% rate of taxation, it means that a day out of a 5 working day a week is a day that you work for the state. You don't get a penny out of it. It's what the state takes out of you. But they still argue, oh, we need socialized care, we need this, we need welfare, all this kind of stuff. It's effectively sanctioning your own demise, sanctioning the body, the thing that actually makes you a slave, effectively. There is this lack of understanding that individuals have to be left alone to look after their own life. This continues going back to somebody else's fault, somebody else should look after them, and demanding effectively what's the unearned. It's what undermining our culture at the moment. You have to realize that your own life, it's your own responsibility to get on with it. You cannot expect somebody else to pay for your holidays.
I think although Islam is not a threat in some senses, but our response to it is making it more of one than it should be. And that involves the pretense and the evasion that goes on, and the concealing of crimes committed by those who adhere to Islam, whilst treating those who criticize Islam as criminals. That is a big problem in the UK, for one. I think, that this idea that integration and community relations, those are the ideals that sit above justice. And therefore you cannot bring to light when a crime is committed by a certain group of people because you threaten those ideals that I just mentioned. And if you place those ideals higher than an equality before the law for everyone, then you threaten the entire principle of justice for everyone as well. And that's how you destroy a country from within. And that's the ripple-on effects of compromising with evil when it's acting. I mean, that's why we do want to celebrate things. We do want to party. We do want to have joy at seeing great things happen in the world. But we want them to be the right virtues. We want them to be the right values. And therefore they won't have that sour taste that Alex kind of referred to when she talks about the hostages returning to their families. Yes, you're delighted for them, absolutely, but you also got that sour taste of knowing that evil has won in order for this to happen, and that's why you want a proper party for the proper values.
Yeah, I want to go into that a bit more. We have a super chat from Bonnie, and we also have Jonathan from Israel joining us just for a bit. So yeah, Jonathan, are you in Tel Aviv right now? And
Yes, I am right now in central Tel Aviv. It's a beautiful evening. I'm just before going to a concert, actually, at the Philharmonic. So in that sense, this is sort of a small triumph, I guess, that we still go to our concerts and not completely enslave ourselves to our misery and the pain of others. So I guess that is one tiny fraction of a positive thing that's going on. But to give you the larger point, what's really strikes me is the confusion of this is not a small confusion of losing dramatically, of surrendering to the enemy's demand, of appeasing them, of releasing murderers, of retreating, of rebuilding the enemy, confusing that not with a draw, but with victory. That is quite a confusion. Calling it peace. I don't know if you've shown here the live. I just shown. Have you seen the images from yesterday from the negotiation with the Israeli delegation sitting in front of the Hamas delegation? Have you seen that? How far have we come? Israel sits on the same table with Hamas, no less. This is worse than Oslo. This is because in Oslo we didn't have the foresight. We didn't have knowing, okay, like you could have told, but still maybe
Oh,
we
I
can
just want to say, Jonathan, I
cut some
totally
slack.
disagree with you. Come on. No, this is not Oslo, right? This is not Oslo.
It's much worse. It's much worse. I agree. So it's deeply concerning. I must say that I find it difficult to feel safe because maybe one morning somebody will come, take me to Gaza, and who knows what will happen. This is celebration, not celebration, sorry, rewarding the acts of kidnapping our people. I'm of course happy for the hostages to come back, their families to come back to their homes. Of course, they should be back. But I'm thinking about the ones of tomorrow. And unfortunately, this country doesn't know what tomorrow is. It just doesn't recognize the concept. And that's tragic. But in a sense, we deserve it because everybody seems to like it. I see overwhelming support for this, except me and Alex, I guess, and a few others.
No, Jonathan. I mean, there's even hostage families who don't support it. So I mean, there is opposition to it.
I think the vast majority supports it. Vast majority.
Yeah, okay. If out of the 20 living hostages, I only know of two sets of parents who are against the deal. So.
Well, so 10%. How much is it?
It's not an insignificant thing to say, right?
No,
that you say, I know this is evil. I know that this is wrong, and my son would not like that. My son would not want this.
That's not going to help us. That's not going to help us. 10% standing up for us. So it's very concerning, very troubling, really depressing, I must say. But that's it. I'm going to go to the concert now. Thank you. I think my message is, go live life, make the most of it. Go to experience some great art. Maybe that's our path forward. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for joining us, Jonathan. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, the point about enjoying your life, and we made it earlier. Next week I am flying to America. Hopefully, for my anti-Trump things, I won't get denied at the border, especially with the government shutdown right now. So, or maybe that means less control, and I can get in more easily. But something that I think Richard brought up earlier, or generally this sort of fighting against evil, I think, especially when it comes to free marketers, I think something there is almost like this weird thing of like a concept of like there is like the free market and then there is me, right? It's like things will solve itself because of free market and I don't have to do anything. And it's like, no, the quote from Benjamin Franklin, right? We have a republic if we can keep it. That means us, like every single individual, needs to take care so a republic survives. Every single individual has to fight for basically, the society to stay healthy, to stay good in a free market, right? It's if you have a problem, that's why I dislike when somebody says, especially socialists do that, like, oh, it's a problem there. Well, if you think it's a problem, then go solve it. Like, that's how we solve things, is somebody, because, when it comes to problems, when it comes to things, it's values. If you have a value to something, go and achieve it. Don't rely on like, oh, maybe somebody else will do it. No, if you value something, you need to take care of it. Stuart, any thoughts on either what Jonathan brought up or anything else?
Well, just to say that I don't think that it's just Israel. Obviously, Jonathan understandably is focused on Israel, but this problem of not thinking about tomorrow, or really just not thinking long range at all, not thinking in principle. I mean, it's a huge problem in the US, and I think it's probably a huge problem worldwide. But yeah, I mean, I feel for him. I feel for Israel. I think this is long range going to be very bad. But yeah, there's so few of us thinking long range.
Marco?
Well, what more can we add? I mean, this doesn't bode well for the future of Israel, to be honest. If Israel's enemies have been told again that by taking hostages you're gonna get what you want, well, what do you expect? Is that they're gonna do more of this? And it's, as I mentioned earlier on, it's not only the evil people around Israel, the evil people who want Israel dead, but it's also the other dictators across the world that they are watching and taking note, seeing how the West refuses to stand up for its own values, see how our politicians are quite happy to shrug it off. I'm quite happy to celebrate the ceasefire because, another problem off my plate. I can carry on and, go to the next theater opening or whatever. So it's the kind of implication that this ceasefire has for the future, a future where terrorism and hostage taking and murders are effectively rewarded to a disgraceful extent. And it's true that most of the population, as Richard pointed out, realize that this is not right. But the fact that they accept this morality of sacrifice, and all this kind of stuff, will lead them to shut up instead of fight back and start saying, no, we don't want that. This is wrong. In a way, that's why we saw students protesting with their face covered up yesterday during the effective remembrance of October 7th, the other day. Because they know deep inside that it's wrong to celebrate the death of people, the death of innocent people. So that's why they cover their faces, because they know deep inside that this is not acceptable. But they go ahead and do it anyway because they're part of the collective that tells them to do it, because they feel good about it. And that's this kind of, again, Stuart mentioned the short range living that these people are doing. They are quite happy to, for the sake of feeling part of the group, with their friends, going out in the streets celebrating the Hamas atrocities. They don't realize that actually in the long term they're destroying their own soul. They're destroying the very fabric of the society that allowed them to do this kind of stupid things. And it's depressing that people actually don't realize that all this leads to a future which is not really looking good.
We're fresh in the moment right now, but there's going to be a chance to analyze the past couple of years with a bit of distance, with a bit of overview. And that's going to take in some of the things that Israel's definitely got right in this period. There's some of the things that move the dial in Israel's favor. And that includes looking at, think how different the short term would be if there were still Iranian nuclear facilities functioning across Iran. So although that isn't wasn't as utterly wiped out as any of us would hope, and that's postponed the short range for a bit longer, at least that is one element of it. Look at how successful Israel was with its intel, with its specific attacks, with its wiping out of evil leadership. Consider how much people know that no matter what this agreement says, no matter even if it says about not attacking in Qatar in the future as one of the points in the agreement, people who are terrorists and are against Israel know to some fairly deep level that they are at risk anywhere in the world of being wiped out by Israel. Now that is a significant victory for Israel as well. To know that they will never feel as secure as they did prior to that. They thought places like Qatar would be safe; they'd be safe forever. They could. That Iran was in their invincible ultimate backer who couldn't be defeated. Some of those things have been exposed for the paper tigers that they are. And they've been exposed when Israel has been at its strongest and its most consistent with its own values. So it's easy to lose that in the sight of the overview, and some of the lessons that your enemies have also learnt in the course of this. And hopefully some of that may have an effect. Time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, because somebody earlier said something like the democratic states are the problem because leaders are short-term thinking. And no, leaders are short-term thinking not because of democracy, it's because the reality is that philosophy is short-term. If you go to the past, anything great that ever was created by Western democratic liberal nations. I could list a bunch of things. Individual rights, the Industrial Revolution, beating up Nazis, Israel defeating a bunch of nations in 6 days. That's all Western democratic nations. That's not the problem. The problem is that not even the leaders. I oftentimes don't even want to blame the leaders too much because they are simply reflection of the people who elect them. This is another result of democracy, is we do get generally what we want. And what sucks is that what we want is not what we should actually want because, again, of bad philosophy. But with that, Alex, any last thoughts to leave us with? Earlier, I also asked what people will think will happen, so maybe you can add something to that if you think the hostages will be released and what will sort of the days after look like and anything else, and also where can people find you?
Yeah, so I think I'm reminded very much of the verse from the Torah that we printed on the prisoners that were released, the terrorists that were released in the last hostage exchange. We released, "The eternal people do not forget. I chase my enemies and I catch them for their evil actions," right? And that's something we also put on their bracelets, we put on their clothes, we put it everywhere as a reminder. Okay, guys, beware, right? Don't forget about us, which is nice to think about. But for me, I think that I see this as really quite a scary moment, because if I look back, just today we were taking a look at the rapid escalation that we've seen in the past couple of years of violence. In 2006, we think about the Second Lebanon War as if it was some kind of huge incident, huge war. There was no sirens in Tel Aviv during that war. And then I think about our situation now, that we have intercontinental ballistic missiles, that we have cross-border raids, that we have in every area of Israel, right? And the problem is as well is that, so we have multiple continuous conflicts. We have, kind of this no idea about where are the safe zones. Now you have as well, the citizens are completely desensitized to the alerts and the, constant conflict. It's just, we've integrated intercontinental ballistic missiles into our lives, right? I mean, I remember in 2012, it was a huge deal when you had a little fakakta, rocket being sent to Tel Aviv. I mean, yeah, the rocket, would have maybe damaged your kitchen a little bit, but come on, now we're intercontinental ballistic missiles. Where have we gotten to? Now we see as well that there's kind of an erosion of the states, because I see the Druze having their cross-border raid into Syria. And you're seeing, ultra-Orthodox Jews go into Lebanon on foot to try to, go to visit various, religious sites. I mean, that's complete lack of control. It's complete lack of control, complete lack of the concept of sovereignty, because we don't truly understand what the purpose of a state is. So we're not respecting that state. So the citizens are not respecting that state. We're seeing also, I mean, I was seriously considering starting a militia, right, locally with women. Imagine that. I'm thinking, hey, guys, a whole bunch of women that didn't have their husbands, that were all living in the same community because their husbands were at war. I said, hey, gals, what do you think? We'll get a couple of, we'll start having a defense, a defense force, right, for the town. That's crazy. The fact that I'm even thinking in this constant way. I really don't even want to have a gun. It's a lot of responsibility to have a gun. I really don't know if I want to act. If there's, if something happens, it's a huge responsibility. Think about it. And it's massive. And I'm, it's tough. So there's all of these things that I'm really thinking about. Do I think that they're going to release the hostages? No. Why would they? I think they'll keep somebody, one or two people that they can't find. Okay, there'll be Ronarads that they'll hold over our heads for the rest of our lives. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, just quickly, yesterday Hamas tried to kidnap a soldier in Gaza. So,
I think it's wrong to even say it's Hamas. I mean, like it's a it's a hodgepodge of different militias, and the dominant one, Hamas, they're going to take over like within a couple of days, within a couple of days after us leaving. That's what the defense establishment has kind of said, that they'll gain control over the cities within a couple of hours, right? So a week it'll all be gone. What can I say? Like it's difficult, but I am feeling positive. It's even with all of this, I have to admit, the Israelis are out in full force. Everybody's out. It's Sukkot. We are super happy. We're super partying. The streets are packed with people having fun, celebrating. Like celebrating life, not celebrating the situation in Jerusalem is very different from the situation in Tel Aviv in terms of the kind of attitude towards the hostage deal, right? Very negative. Okay, here. Because remember, like we live with, the Palestinians. Like we live, like a person from Tel Aviv will not see a Palestinian, ever. Like, but once in a blue moon. Us, it's every day. We live with them, right? We're embedded. We know it's personal. I mean, the idea, I actually can't even, when I think about it, it actually starts to make me feel like I can't breathe. I think about these people being released onto the streets. Like it's just inconceivable. I mean, quite literally, they could walk to my house. It's just terrifying. It's just where's the justice? And I'm really scared to look at the list of the terrorists that are being released, because if there's any celebs on there, I'm thinking about the people that the two men that murdered the Fogel family. I'm thinking about these massive celebrity terrorists that it'll just shatter me to know that they're out.
Stuart, any last thoughts from you, and where can people find you?
Yeah, I feel for you, Alex. I really do. I can't even imagine. I have a Substack, stuartmarolis.substack.com, and I'm also on Facebook. So feel free to look me up there.
Yeah, I mean, just something to add about the so-called Palestinian prisoners that will be released, or as they are referred to. It's, in America, when you are released from prison, sometimes you have like a hard time integrating back into a society. But I have a feeling these Palestinian terrorists will have an easy job of integrating back into the broader Palestinian society. Marco, any last thoughts from you?
And that's why the Palestinians are not celebrating ceasefire; they're celebrating a victory, and they know perfectly well that they got one over Israel and the rest of the world. So yeah, it's a again to repeat the fact we are super happy that the hostages might come back. I'm a bit more hopeful than what Alex was saying now. I hope it's going to happen. But yeah, probably they already said that they lost contact with some of them, so they will probably try and keep some of them. But yeah, beside that, we are absolutely delighted that they might come back home after over 2 years of captivity in Gaza. But the long term, it doesn't look good at all. Yeah, in the short term, we might have a period where people feel good about the ceasefire and stuff, but it's not going to last. Again, we've seen in the past that every time there is a brief period of peace, Hamas or whoever it happens to be in charge of the Islamic militia is going to attack again. And hopefully next time it's not going to be with nuclear material provided by Iran, hopefully.
And I'll just add to finish up, we've got a 20-point peace plan here, but none of those points relate to the future of Western countries themselves, of course. None of them relate to the ability of Jews to go about their lives within countries like the UK or France or even the US. And all of that is part of the bigger picture, isn't it? And it's part of the bigger picture to learning the lessons of everything that we've seen in the past 2 years, and the fact that there are enemies within, and there are people who support those enemies within, and that some of them will do anything to pretend everything's fine, right up until people are murdered in their dozens or hundreds. And even then, they'll excuse it and explain it away. So, the peace plan that's necessary needs to be a much wider one. That's why it needs to be focused on ideologies, and it needs to be focused on being honest and not evading some of those crucial facts that have been evaded for far too long by governments, by police, by the media, by all sorts of categories, and by individuals themselves, pretending that everything's hunky dory, and it isn't. So that's a necessary stage, and I'm sure we'll be doing shows at some point on those kind of elements as well. But in terms of where people can see some of our work, you can always check out the Briefly Objective, where we made a bunch of videos on the crucial elements and principles involved in the conflict of the past 2 years. So the link's in the description below. Do check it out. Thanks.
And today's episode might have not been as positive as we would want. Something that is positive is the irreplaceable Spark conference. You can check it out on objectivism.co.uk. Link is also in the chat. It's going to be a much more positive conference. We'll have a lot of professionals from the objectivist field, but in sort of actually doing something in the real world. We've just announced, I think, another talk, specifically what it's going to be about. So you can check out the program on objectivism.co.uk. You can still get your tickets. It's October 25th, 26th. It's a weekend conference. It's in just 2 weeks in Southern California, specifically Orange County, California. I'll be there. Razi will be there. Many of the speakers you've seen, not specifically on this call, but on some other shows like Michael Kaufman, Jonathan Honig, James Valiant, all of them will be there. You'll have a chance to meet them, listen to them, and in some cases even get a one-on-one coaching session with them. You can find out about that and everything else on objectivism.co.uk. With that, thank you guys for joining me today. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show. Until then, bye-bye.